I don't know about you, but I have had more than enough of this disease that attacks not only human beings, but so many of the greatest things about our country. Our pubs, our clubs, our football, our theatre, and all the gossipy gregariousness and love of human contact that drives the creativity of our economy. And I can tell you that your government is working night and day to repel this virus, and we will succeed, just as this country has seen off every alien invader for the last 1,000 years. And we will succeed by collective effort. By following the guidance. And we're working for the day when life will be back to normal. Flying in a plane will be back to normal, and hairdressers will no longer look as though they're handling radioactive isotopes. And when we can go and see our loved ones in care homes. And when we no longer have to greet each other by touching elbows, as in some giant national version of the birdie dance. I know the people of this country are going to defeat this virus because I've seen how the country's responded before, with the energy and self-sacrifice of the NHS, the care workers, the armed services, the spirit that was incarnated in the boundless devotion of Captain Tom Moore. But after all we've been through, it isn't enough just to go back to normal. And we're working for the day when life will be back to normal. Flying in a plane will be back to normal, and hairdressers will no longer look as though they're handling radioactive isotopes. And when we can go and see our loved ones in care homes. And when we no longer have to greet each other by touching elbows, as in some giant national version of the birdie dance. But after all we've been through, it isn't enough just to go back to normal. We've lost too much. We've mourned too many. We've been through too much frustration and hardship just to settle for the status quo ante, to think that life can go on as it was before the plague. And it will not, because history teaches us that events of this magnitude, wars, famines, plagues, events that affect the vast bulk of humanity, as this virus has, they don't just come and go. They are more often than not the trigger for an acceleration of social and economic change.
They are more often than not the trigger for an acceleration of social and economic change.
Because we human beings will simply not content ourselves with a repair job. We see these moments as the time to learn and to improve on the world that went before. And that's why this government will build back better. And so we can't now define the mission of this country as merely to restore normality. That isn't good enough. In the depths of the Second World War, when just about everything had gone wrong, the government sketched out a vision of the post-war New Jerusalem that they wanted to build. And that's what we're doing now, in the teeth of this pandemic. We're resolving not to go back to 2019, but to do better, to reform our system of government,
To
renew our infrastructure, to spread opportunity more widely and fairly, and create the conditions for a dynamic recovery that is led not by the state, but by free enterprise. We need to move fast, not just to deal with the immediate economic fallout, but because after 12 years of relative anemia, we need to lift the trend rate of growth. We've seen the frantic global scrabble for vaccines, for therapies, and so now we're doubling our funding for all types of revolutionary scientific breakthroughs with a national advanced research and projects agency. When I talk about levelling up, I mean making the streets safer for everyone. And when I talk about levelling up, I mean not just investing massively in our schools. I'm thinking not just about the inputs, but about the outputs, the changes in the lives of young people. And so I want to take further an idea that we've tried in the pandemic and to explore the value of one-to-one teaching. But I believe such intensive teaching could be transformational and of massive reassurance to parents. It's in crises like this that new approaches are born. From internet shopping to working from home, it looks as though COVID has massively accelerated changes in the world of work. And as old jobs are lost and new jobs are created, we're offering free training for adults without A-levels in vital skills, from adult care to wind turbine maintenance. And the COVID crisis is a catalyst for change. So we need to give people the chance to train for the new jobs that are being created every day. And there's one area where we are progressing with gale force speed, and that is the green economy. The green industrial revolution that in the next 10 years will create hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of jobs. Imagine that future with high-skilled green-collar jobs in wind, in solar, in nuclear, hydrogen, and in carbon capture and storage. Retrofitting homes, ground source heat pumps. Mother Nature has savaged us with COVID. But with the help of basic natural phenomena, we will build back and bounce back greener. And this government will lead that green industrial revolution. We will create the conditions for individuals and for companies to flourish with a high-skill, low-crime economy. And if there was a physical audience in front of me now, I would solicit cheers by shouting out the details of our revolution in transport infrastructure. The A roads we're going to upgrade, the rail lines we're building or electrifying, the simple ways in which we will improve your lives, your daily commute. But we must be clear that there comes a moment when the state must stand back and let the private sector get on with it. Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, has come up with some brilliant expedients to help business, to protect jobs and livelihoods. But let's face it, he has done things that no Conservative Chancellor would have wanted to do, except in times of war or disaster. This government has been forced by the pandemic into erosions of liberty that we deeply regret, and to an expansion in the role of the state, from lockdown enforcement to the many bailouts and subsidies that go against our instincts. But we accept them because there is simply no reasonable alternative. This government has been forced by the pandemic into erosions of liberty that we deeply regret, and to an expansion in the role of the state, from lockdown enforcement to the many bailouts and subsidies that go against our instincts. But we accept them because there is simply no reasonable alternative.